Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam, Trailokyam Sacharacharam, Atpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Matrarupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstita, Namastasyai, Namastasyai, Namastasyai Namo Namaha. So welcome back after the holiday. And we are, Mark, can you tell us what chapter and shloka we're on?
Chapter 17, page 303, number 85.
Okay, so we've continuing our discussion of samadhi. And we had these two technical words, prakasha, light, the luminosity of awareness itself, and vimarsha, which is deliberation, thinking about things. So what this text is saying, the awareness, the prakasha, plus the vimarsha is what we call the mind. Remove the vimarsha, the flow of thoughts. And what you have is samadhi, just the pure light of awareness. And we've been dealing with the fact that the presence of phenomenal objects does not have to be an impediment to samadhi. Knowing their fundamental unreality. Not problematic. Now, let's cut to the chase. We can read these texts, and this is what we call paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. One of the benefits of the teacher, if he's a person who's a full knower of the Supreme and has retired into the Supreme, if we tune up to the teacher. He can show us the mind in samadhi. Swamiji used to say, meet me there. All right. Ganesh, will you help us out this evening?
Sure. Mark, did you say 85?
Yes, page 303.
Brahma sukhame tasya leshatopi na sammitam adyavadhi vyartha esha kalo me hyati vahitah. The delight up to Brahma, the creator, is not equal even to a particle of this delight. Till now, this useless time was indeed passed or endured by me.
So we've got the story of King Janaka, the enlightenment of Janaka. And this occurs in many different scriptures. And in this one, I like it. It's so funny because he's gotten drunk and he's gone out for some fresh air. Celestial damsels have given him the truth. He comes back and he has his mananam, he thinks about it. After having had his shravana, he heard it. And then he plunges into samadhi. Then he comes out, as it says in this verse, this delight, it's not even the delight of Brahma, the creator, is equal to this. So what does samadhi reveal to us? First and foremost, it reveals that there's no personal me. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that part that's Brahma. And I understand experientially that the mind abiding in the self is happiness. It's not in the people, places, things, and conditions. I only use those to just get a little bit of juice of the self. In the end, worldly pleasure is not antithetical to the bliss of Brahman. Truth is, there's no such thing as worldly pleasure. All I ever get out of the world is a taste of myself. So the woman of wisdom who can just let go has what the scriptures call Atmaramana. One can revel in the self. Brahmananda rasa, the juice, the taste of Brahman. Susali brought a wonderful saying attributed to the Buddha on Wednesday, and I just love it. I'm going to see if I can remember it accurately. If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you detach a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. But if you let go completely, you will have freedom. That's what we need to do. Let go, let go, let go. We don't seem to be able to let go of the world until we grasp its fundamental illusory nature. So here Janaka comes out of samadhi. Oh, It's pretty cool stuff. Next verse.
Aviditva swam nidhanam chintamanigananvitam yatha bhikshamatati vai mushti pishta pralipsaya aho lokastatha swatma anandajnana vimohita आनन्दाज्ञानविमोहिताः बाह्यं सुखं लेशमात्रं प्राप्नुवन्ति महाश्रमैः. Not having known his own treasure possessing a multitude. Not having known his own treasure possessing a multitude of wish-fulfilling gems, as one begs for alms with the desire of getting a handful of flour, so people, deluded by the ignorance of the bliss of their own self, obtain through great efforts a mere particle of eternal happiness.
Yes. So this term chintamani, the wish-fulfilling gem. So it's like a person who has wealth in their pockets but doesn't know it, is begging for alms. So what the scripture is implying is what I call the pleasure principle. Let's go over that again because it's foundational. The first thing I do because of ignorance and the force of the past, because of my vasanas, I determine that a certain thing is dear to me. We'll use the prayer stone as a metaphor. Priya, it's dear to me. It can be cars, it can be sex, it can be money, it can be the approval of others, it can be whatever it is. But I'm the one who determines that. It's dear to me. Then what do? I try to get proximate to the object of desire. That's called moda. Then, when desire and object of desire become one, I call it the point of pleasure. Technical term is pramoda. This is what Shankar will call the experience of the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. Whenever we satisfy an object, or we also experience it in deep sleep. But what is it that happens? The very act of wanting stuff. Because of the force of the past, I'm restless. I can't still. I'm upset or agitated, and I want to fix that feeling. My mind says drug, sex, and rock and roll. People, places, things, and condition. More, better, different. I'll be happy when. It'll be better if. Gimme, 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 gimme. I come from a place of fundamental spiritual impoverishment. I'm a beggar. And then I work, because it's hard work getting all that stuff. Desire and object of desire become one. Actually, what happens? For a moment, the kama, the craving, the spriha, the longing, the vancha, the wanting ceases. How much it ceases depends on how badly I want it and how completely the object satisfies the desire. There's always also a gradient from gross to subtle. Gross objects are easier to obtain. The pleasure is intense. but it's incredibly fleeting. Subtler objects like feelings, ideas, harder to achieve, but the pleasure is a little more enduring. But all of them are conditional and temporary. Now, what is the difference in the process for a yogi and a fool? The yogi understands it's the craving itself that is the problem. And if the universe brings an object of desire to me, I don't avoid. There's no point in that. There's nothing inherently wrong with the object. So I taste the object. Ah, Krishna. I know that it's just a mediated experience of the bliss of myself. Now, why is it important to have intense vairagya and deep meditation? Again, we can have paroksha jnana, indirect knowledge. I may theoretically know myself is bliss and the objects of the world are basically void. But if I have the direct experience of non-mediated happiness, the great peace of meditation. The Christian scriptures call it the peace that passes all understanding. What a beautiful phrase. Then I know experientially, my kingdom is not of this world. I have a treasure you know not of. Then the enjoyments of the world are like a thimbleful of water added to the ocean. I'm no longer dependent upon. You can tell it. The person has no samadhi. They're going to take the world as serious business. You can feel it in their hearts. They may have the words of truth, but there's still a desire of desires. And the truth is, all the mind ever is looking for is happiness. From the moment we get up in the morning till our head hits the pillow, we're seeking the good and avoiding misery. So what samadhi reveals to us is, where is the good? Oh my gosh, it's myself. It's myself. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Tadalam me pritha bahya sukhalesha parishramat anantananda sandoha tatparasyam hi sarvada. Therefore, enough of this useless effort for a particle of external happiness for me. Let me always be exclusively devoted to the endless mass of bliss.
So He says, enough of this silly world, enough of women, enough of money, enough of winning wars. Let me retire into samadhi. There are saints who do that. We hear stories in the scriptures of saint such and such, the sage so and so is in samadhi for 12 years or something like that. There are sages who are fond of samadhi. But nirvikalpa samadhi is not the highest state. And now Janaka is going to have an insight which reveals to him a deeper truth. Going on.
Alametena bahyena vyavaharena mekimu pishtapeshana kalpena chopalambhapadena vai. What is the use of external affairs for me? Enough of this, which is like grinding the flour, and is the subject of censure.
So again, he just reinforces the same idea. What's the use of doing worldly things? It's just work, busyness. There's nothing to be gained by it. I have found the pearl of great price, the ch17. Going on.
Tani bhojyani tanyeva malyani shayanani cha bhushanani vichitrani yoshit sambhogakakshate chiraparyushita praya anyapi samsevyate punah gata nugatikatvan me jugupsa nahi jayate. Disgust is not produced in me, who am devoting myself again to those eatables, those very garlands and beds, various ornaments, and those enjoyments with women, though they are like food which is stale for a long time, on account of following blindly what others have done.
So he is fed up with the former existence. But note, there's a little bit of a sense of an aversion to the world. Let's see if he resolves that issue. Going on.
Iti nishchitya bhuyoham yavadantarmukhodyatah tavadanyo vimarsho mam sushubha pratyupasthita. Thus having ascertained, as soon as I was intent on looking inwardly into the self again, another auspicious deliberation was present before me.
So now he has this deeper insight. He goes in again, and now he's beginning to see the self in and through the world. So he's now begun to enter into what we call sahaja samadhi, natural or continuous samadhi, such that activity in the world or retiring into meditation makes no difference. Going on.
Aho me chittamohoyam kim mamevam upasthitah ananda paripurnatma sa evaham sthitopi san bhuyah kim kartumichhami praptavyam vapi kim maya kimapraptam maya kutra kada va prapyate katham. Alas, why has this mental delusion of mine come to me in this manner? Though remaining with my inner self filled with bliss, what do I, that very person, wish to do again? And what is there attainable by me? What has not been obtained by me? Where, when, and how is it obtained?
Yes. So the point here is, when are you ever not you? Does activity in the world make you lose yourself? Now, practically speaking, when you're around a man of wisdom with that deep introversion. I was talking with my friend Vilasni. We're talking about Swamiji. And he was so empty. You'd see this puppet dude in the orange robes doing stuff, very, very active in the world. But if you tuned into him, just vast emptiness. So in meditation or in activity, the mind did not extrovert the way a normal or ordinary person's mind does. How do we attain this? Eyes wide open, seeing the phenomenal world. We don't take it as substantive. We don't take it as real. Then we let the equipment fulfill its duty in the world. Sport with it all. Next verse.
Apraptasyapi sampraptihi katham satya hi sambhavet aho nantachidananda rupe me syat katham kriya. How can even the attainment of what has not been obtained be realized? Ah, how can there be activity for me in my natural state of infinite consciousness bliss?
So the self does nothing, though the body acts. Krishna frames it this way: what is action in the midst of actionlessness? And actionlessness in the midst of action. If you are identified with the body, sitting still is an action. If you are identified with the self, you have no relationship to the equipment. Though the body moves about according to the winds, the desires of other people, I do nothing. I go nowhere. Still. Next verse.
Dehendriyantakarana anyapi swapna samani vai mamaivatani sarvani svakhandai kachidatmanah. The body, the senses, and the mind are also similar to dream objects. All of them are only mine who am of the nature of the one undivided consciousness. No, all of them denotes those possessed by everyone.
So the equipment, the body, mind, intellect, even the appearance of a perceiver, feeler, thinker, entity, the ego sense, if it arises, are like a dream. The woman of wisdom no longer takes them seriously. There's no investment in doing this or that, or not doing this or that. Sarvamaya, Sarvamana. All is Maya. All is bliss. So he may be seen to be doing practices, sitting in meditation, chanting the name of the Lord, or out there in the world, cooking, cleaning, going to the job. For that one, it's all the same. It's all the same. Next one.
Tatrai kamantakaranam nirudhyapi chakim bhavet anyanyapyani ruddhani manamsi cha mamaivahi. There is among such dream objects what can happen even by restraining one mind. Other minds also, which are unrestrained, are surely mine alone. No, undivided consciousness cannot have individualized units of consciousness, each having its own dream experiences.
So the whole point being it's all mind. It's all chaitanya. It's all the play of consciousness. Now listen carefully. Even the most ordinary mind state in the waking state cannot rob you of yourself. So once you're rooted in samadhi, now we let go of any attachment to that. In the book, I Am That, Nisargadatta Maharaj, one of the disciples, asks him, are you in samadhi all the time? And he says, of course not. But his state is kutusta, constant, effortless knowledge. Aham Brahmasmi. All this is Brahman. I am Brahman. There's no such thing as bunch of individuals. It's all like a dream. Let me make a side discussion here. Those of us who've studied Yoga Vasishta, one of the most famous sections in it are the Saptagyana Bhumikas, the 7 stages of knowledge. Very famous, very famous. Ramana Maharshi was once asked, Bhagawan, to which of the 7 stages of knowledge does the jnani belong? And his answer is the 4th. Scripture is very clear. Knowledge of yourself. So then the disciple says, if that be so, why have 3 more superior to it been listed in the scripture? And Bhagawan's answer is wonderful. He says, they are not stages of bondage and release. That is accomplished at the 4th. What they are the experiences of the self-realized person. And you can go look them up. They're online. Complete non-apprehension of the phenomenal world. And, they go on. And he says, these are not to be achieved by mere will or effort. If you're struggling to achieve them, you're not even a jnani again. The mark of the jnani is they've let go. Absolutely. They are the result of karma, the result of merits accrued in the past. So when we meet saints, men and women of knowledge, some can appear to be deeper in their self-abidance than others. Does that mean they're more realized? No. You either know it or you don't. But if you are spontaneously led to deeper and deeper self-absorption, then these post-enlightenment samadhis but if you're jonesing for, I want this, you're a fool. The mark of the person of wisdom is all the struggling has ceased. Any thoughts on this? If you want to know the source material for that, there's a little book called The Spiritual Teachings of Ramana Maharshi. The old edition of it was purple. I think the more recent one is white with a picture of Bhagawan on the front. You'll know it because it's the one with the preface by Carl Jung. And they're just simple questions and answers with Sri Ramana. And it's a wonderful, wonderful little text. All right, back to Tripura. Next verse, please.
तथा चैकस्य मनसो निरोधे मम किं भवेत् निरुद्धान्य निरुद्धानि मनांसि मयि bhantyam. Thus, what can happen to me when there is a restraint of one mind? The restrained and unrestrained minds surely appear in me.
Yes. So if people restrain the mind or don't restrain the mind, that never touches me. Now listen carefully. There are people who study and they come to this point in the teaching without yet any real samadhi. Notice in the story, Janaka went through the stage where he had deep samadhi. It's what I call the Vedanta logic group. Meditation is just a mind state, it's non-real, so why should I bother to meditate? Samadhi is just a mind state, it's not real, why should I bother about samadhi? Coveting the world is just a mind state, why should I be concerned about it? Let me just go be like an ordinary person in the world. And then what happens is the person does nothing but rationalize their suffering. And that's not freedom. That's self-justification. Only you can tell for yourself whether the equipment is just moving through the world like a ghost, or whether it's serious business for you. So, only you know if your mind seriously extroverts into the world because of ignorance, or it's just sport. Now, this is not to be used to try to check out the mind states of other people. That is a useless activity. We can only do our own yoga. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Nirodhe sarvamanasan apime na nirodhanam mahakashat suvitate kuto mai nirodhanam. Even when there is the restraint of all minds, there is no restraint of me, who am the one undivided consciousness. How can there be restraint in me, who am extended even more than the great sky?
So the restraint of minds doesn't touch me. Now, he's using a word, nirodha, and it's very deliberate because this is the famous word used Sutra 2, the Yoga Sutras. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the restraining of the mind stuff from forming vrittis. So is yoga the restraint of the mind? Is it this constant binding back of the mind? Is it deliberate effort of tuning up? Yes and no. At the level of our sadhana, by all means, it's this deep introversion, viveka, vairagya, shama, dhamma, uparati, titiksha, shraddha, samadhana, all efforts to introvert the mind. But then when wisdom is steady, then you give that up. Or we can interpret the scripture as this: the only way to effectively restrain the mind is to grasp its fundamental unreality. You don't believe your mind. The mind has nothing to hold on to anywhere. But the mark of real wisdom is when the yogi has given up all efforts. Lots of paradoxes in here. If this teaching is going, what's he talking about? Just put it on the shelf. But those who have ears to hear it. Next verse.
Evam purnanandarupe samadhisyat katham mai chidananda prapurnasya purnasya gaganadapi mama kriya katham kasyad yayapi sta shubha shubhe. Thus, how can samadhi arise in me who am of the nature of complete bliss? For me who am complete with consciousness bliss and fuller than even the sky, how and what can activity be through which good and bad arise?
Yes. So practice samadhi. Oh, you're not practicing samadhi. Again, in the Yoga Sutras, great emphasis on it. Even Shankara, in one section of v85, says, practice samadhi. Now, when you've achieved samadhi, this great tranquility of mind, let go. Or, if we define nirvikalpa samadhi as when the distinction between knower, knowing, and known has been merged, do not think of it as a mind state, the mind state of no mind. It is another name for yourself. Who is the knower when it comes to you? Me. What is the means of knowledge? Me. What is that which is known? Me. Or as Shankara thunders in Nirvana Shatakam, Aham nirvikalpo. I am nirvikalpa. And the mind is nowhere standing. I've lost the capacity to tell anything about my mind or your mind. No attachment to one mind state or another. All is Maya. All is bliss. Next verse.
अनन्तेषु शरीरात्मा भासेषु मन्महित्वतः क्रियाभासावभासेन तदभावेन वापि किं कर्तव्यं वाप्यकर्तव्यं अवन्नास्त्यपि लेशतः. In the infinite appearances of the nature of bodies on account of my greatness, what is the use of the presence or absence of the appearances of activity? There is nothing that should be done or should not be done by me, even to a small extent.
So I am completely detached from the world of phenomena. All of it is in me. I have no relation. I do not think that this body is mine and that body is not. Let them all play their part in the great Leela, the great drama of life. No distinction. Going on, next one.
Tasman nirodhena kim tasman nirodhena kim syadaham ananda nirbharah. Tasman nirodhena kim syad ahamananda nirbharah samadha pasamadhava satyapurna swabhavakah. Therefore, what can happen to me by the restraint of the mind? I am full of bliss and have a nature which is true and complete in samadhi or in the absence of samadhi.
So he sums it up. My nature does not change. My nature is Purnam. Whether the mind be samadhi or not samadhi. When are you ever not? Now, the jnani may be fond of samadhi, because it is the highest form of worldly pleasure, but he's not attached to it. So at night, I'm a deep yogi, I only sleep 4 hours a night. Where does your samadhi go for those 4 hours? Gone. But again, you cannot renounce something you haven't got. Own samadhi. Now let it go. Next one.
Yasyam kriyayam dehoyam sitastatraiva tishtatu ityaham sarvatha swastha sumahananda mandirah anastamita bharupo anastamita bharupah aham supurno niranjanah. Let this body remain in that very activity in which it is established. Thus, I am completely self-abiding and an abode of very great bliss. I am of the nature of light, which does not set, is full and stainless.
So Janaka comes to the conclusion there is nothing to be gained by withdrawing from the world. Let the body fulfill its function in the Lord's great plan. You will be placed in the position where you're supposed to be. Act your part. It may be given you to be a brahmachari, to be a sannyasi, to go live up in the mountains in a cave. Swami Tapovanam certainly did. It may be given you to start a business, to be an educator, to be a doctor, to be a retired doctor. Who knows? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter in the least. Give up the idea that any restraint is necessary. Now, again, this is very advanced teaching. At one level of our practice, of course, restraint is important. Getting established in samadhi is important. Attaining to yoga rudha. I'm willing to do anything for the rest of eternity and willing to not do anything for the rest of eternity is important. Getting established so my mind is the same in heat and cold, pleasure and suffering, honor and dishonor. Going through the stage where I understand the world is trinkets and baubles. There's nothing substantive in it. Don't worry about it. It will be done. no personal sense of agency. Next verse. Are we getting
Uttama.
close to the end of this chapter, Ganesh?
Yeah, I think we only have 7 verses to go.
I thought so. Okay.
Uttamadhikritasyevam स्थितिर्मे संप्रकीर्तिता अधमानामने कैस्तु जन्मभिज्ञानगम जन्मभिर्ज्ञानजं फलं मध्यमानां तु क्रमतः श्रवणं च विचारणम् अनुध्यानं च भवति ततो ज्ञानं प्रजायते. Thus has been mentioned the state of mind who am possessed of the highest qualification for self-realization. But for those who are the lowest in qualification or fitness, the fruit bound of knowledge comes through many lives or incarnations. For the middling, hearing, investigation, and meditation occur in that order. Then knowledge is born.
So again, we have these 3 levels of jnanis. The lowest level, those who have tenuous, incidental knowledge, comes and goes. What I call the yo-yo state. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. I still get deluded at times. When knowledge dawns on the mind, oh God, I was so deluded. It says, in time through lifetimes, this will stabilize. The middle level, they attain this freedom through sadhana done in this lifetime. The highest, like Janika, realize at the very hearing of the truth. Those kinds of things are very, very, very. Next verse.
Vijnana phalasamyuktah samadhirdurlabho bhavet vijnana phalahinena kim samadhishatena va tasmad vijnana हीनैस्तैः फलं नास्ति समाधिभिः. The samadhi accompanied by the fruit of knowledge or the experience of pure undivided consciousness would be difficult to be attained. What is the use of 100 samadhis which are bereft of the fruit of knowledge, such as the momentary samadhis experienced in the waking state? Therefore, by those fleeting samadhis during one's activities which are devoid of knowledge, no fruit in the form of liberation occurs.
So the point here is the stopping of the mind in and of itself is not enough. We need the aparoksha jnanam, direct experience, but we also need the paroksha jnana, the knowledge, the understanding. And we have an entire chapter on this in Gita. Jnanam vijnanam cha. And this is the word that, again, the Tattva is using here, where our understanding and our direct experience come together at the same time. That's then when we get the pratyabhinyanam. aha, the recognition. So this is a very important story of the enlightenment of Janika. It takes us briefly through the process. Next one.
Lokepi kachan margeshu nirvikalpa prakashitan bhavan vigyayatesham ajnanam na nivartate. Even in the world, going on roads and not knowing objects manifested in the state free of thought constructs, the ignorance of those objects does not cease. No, perception without thought constructs is not uncommon in daily life, but that does not result in knowledge. Mere nirvikalpa state cannot remove ignorance.
Yes. So the worldly example is you may pass by, say, a raw diamond, not knowing what it is, you don't realize its value. The direct experience must be accompanied by an understanding. So just the stoppage of the mind, the cessation of the vimarsha, in and of itself is not enough. Jnanam, vijnanam, two together. Next one.
Nirvikalpakhya vijnanam jnanamatram nijam vapuh tatsarvada bhasamanam apya bhatavidham nanu vikalpat chhadanadeva vikalpanam vyapohane bhasamanam eva bhuyo bhatakalpam apurvatah. The knowledge called nirvikalpa, or free from thought constructs, is mere knowledge and is one's own essential nature. Though always shining, it is indeed of the kind that is not shining or existing merely on account of the covering of thought constructs. On the removal of thought constructs, only that which is shining very much, always, is almost like what has appeared or become manifest newly.
So this is kind of a wordy construction in the Sanskrit. Basically what he's saying is it's yourself. You do not have awareness. You are aware. You are awareness itself. But the understanding of that is obscured by the vimarsha, the deliberation. So we go through a process of quietening the mind, obtaining a sattvic mind, wherein my self-nature and the fundamental nature of the world becomes evident. Then, when the mind returns and is active, you don't lose or forget yourself. That's why when I hear people say, oh yeah, Jim, I dropped LSD and I had an experience of the self, but I've lost it. Then they didn't have an experience of the self. If you really get it, how can you lose it? Who sees the phone? I do. That's yourself. It's that simple. Oh, you have a little, well, such is the nature of it. Just like when you see your face in the mirror. Oh, that's my face. When you walk out of the bathroom, Your face doesn't stay on the mirror. Oh, I don't have a face. I left it in the bathroom this morning. No. Yourself doesn't disappear when thoughting happens. Next verse. What number are we on? How many more do we have left, rather?
We have 3.
Okay. It's 9 o'clock. Are you willing to finish up the chapter? Is there anybody who needs to log off? Let's go for it then.
Jnanajnaya vibhedena tvajnatam jnatumuchyate evamesha bheva bhavedatma evamesha bhavedatma vijnana krama uttamah. What was unknown on account of the non-separation of knowledge and the knowable is described as known after self-realization. Thus, this would be the highest method of self-realization.
So this inquiry into the nature of the self, the stilling of the mind, discrimination between the self and the not self, going back into exactly the course of action that Janaka went through. That is the shortest, the most direct method. First of all, culling the not self out. What remains? Me. Then what's this not self? Well, we fooled you. There is no not self. It's really the self appearing as name and form. Next one.
Brahmanevam shrutam bhuyo vicharya jnatumarhasi atha vijnatmatattvam atha vijnayatmatattvam kritarthastvam bhavishyasi. Brahmana, you can know by investing repeatedly what has thus been heard. Then, realizing the true principle of the self, you will become one who has gained his object.
Yes. So, investigate. Do it more than once. Next verse.
Janakenaiva madishta tvashtav Janakenaiva madishta tvashtavakro mahamuni pujitastwabhyanyugnato gatva swam sthanamadarat vicharanudhya anapurvam vicharanudhyana purvam vijnaya paramam padam vidhuya sarvasandehan jivan mukto bhavadrutam. Thus taught by Janaka, Ashtavakra, the great sage, worshipped and permitted to go by Janaka, going to his own place with eagerness, realizing the supreme state, preceded by investigation, meditation, and shaking off all doubts, quickly became liberated by living.
So this particular story ends with Janaka enlightening the sage Ashtavakra. Is that the end of the chapter?
Yep.
All right. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Sri Guru Yo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all very much. A delicious chapter.